This week on Star Trek, Journey to Babel, or as I like to think of it, Die Pig Die. This is a review of the Star Trek The Original Series episode, Journey to Babel. If you have not seen this episode and you don't want to know the shocking truth about Ambassador Sarek's relationship to one of the Enterprise crew, be warned, spoilers beyond this point. A ship full of squabbling alien dignitaries on its way to a council meeting where a decision is going to be made which, no matter what direction it goes, will make a bunch of them really unhappy, plus some spy shit and familial tension along the way. What could possibly go wrong? Dr. McCoy is griping about having to get all gussied up in his dress uniform to welcome the Vulcan ambassador aboard the ship, but Kirk tells him to suck it up. Once they get underway, they can relax. McCoy reminds him of the formal reception tonight with all the council delegates, half of whom hate the other half. Sounds like fun. Spock walks in like, I'm here too now. They walk down to the shuttle hangar to welcome aboard the Vulcan ambassador, their final passenger before setting off to their destination. McCoy gets Spock to show him the Vulcan salute, but it's no good. McCoy's hands are skilled enough to perform surgeries on countless alien physiologies, but he can't figure out how to do the two in the pink, two in the stink variation of the shocker. Anyway, Ambassador Sarek walks in with his wife, Amanda. Polite greetings all around, though Sarek does seem to blow off Spock initially. Captain Kirk's like, well, Ambassador and Mrs. Sarek, I'll give you a tour of the ship. Spock, since we're in orbit around Vulcan, before we go, would you like to beam down and visit your parents? And Spock's like, that won't be necessary, Captain. Oh, are they dead? No. Are they assholes? What is it, Spock? Ambassador Sarek and Amanda are my parents. Oh, shit! That's why you should read your personnel files, dude! After that dramatic cold open, we get a captain's log voiceover explaining what the deal is for this week. There's a big, important council meeting at a neutral planetoid called Babel. The Enterprise has been given the job of transporting the delegates to the meeting where they will be dealing with some important and very complex issues. Sounds sexy. And it's apparently going to be a 2-week trip, so I bet these delegates are going to be hooking up all over the place. Welcome to the Love Boat. While showing Sarek and Amanda around engineering, Kirk tries to force a little father-son interaction with Spock, but it doesn't go well. Kirk asks Spock to tell Sarek about the computers in engineering, but Sarek says, I'm the one who first taught Spock about computers. But instead of following in my footsteps and attending the Vulcan Science Academy, he decided to run off and join Starfleet instead. But I'm fine about it. Anyway, I'm gonna go. Continue the tour though, wifey. When both Spock and Sarek are gone, Kirk turns to Amanda like, what's up with Spock and Sarek? Why are they such jerks to each other? And Amanda says Sarek followed in his own father's footsteps, and he wanted Spock to continue that tradition and follow in his, but Spock joined Starfleet instead. Kirk's like, well, yeah, sure he did. Starfleet's the best. And if science is what gets you off, it's way better to do science out here in a spaceship than sitting on Vulcan with your prick in your hand. I guess they're both just stubborn or whatever. Kirk's talk with Amanda is interrupted when Uhura calls down to inform him of strange signals that she's picking up. Sensors show no ships nearby, but the signal was strong enough that whatever it is, it must be close. Kirk's like, all right, well, keep looking, I've got fancy captain shit to do. Another captain's log from Kirk fills us in a bit more on the purpose of this council meeting. A new planetary system, Coridan, is being considered for membership in the Federation. It's an especially volatile question because several of the planets represented by delegates aboard the Enterprise have competing interests on Coridan, and making it a Federation member will affect those interests. We cut to the reception for the delegates. Kirk's laid out quite a spread, food cubes of many colors. McCoy and Sarek chit-chat about the fact that Sarek is actually coming out of retirement for this conference. Sarek is vague about his reasons for retiring, saying only that he had other concerns. Then this guy, Gav, a terrifying eyeless pigman, walks up on Sarek demanding to know how he intends to vote at the council meeting. Sarek declines to tell him, and Pigboy, egged on a bit by this Andorian guy named Shras, starts to get hot about it until Kirk steps in and calms everything down. Meanwhile, across the room, McCoy drags an embarrassing story about Spock out of Amanda, who shares that while Spock mostly behaved like a proper Vulcan as a child, he did have a pet Sailot, which Amanda describes as kind of like a teddy bear. After Sarek and Amanda leave, Spock clarifies that on Vulcan, the teddy bears are alive and have 6-inch fangs. McCoy's like, how's the meat taste? Is it gamey? Or have they bred the wild out of it? Kirk and Spock are called to the bridge. That ship Uhura detected the signal from earlier is back, and this time it's visible on sensors. It's keeping its distance for the moment. It's small, the size of a scout ship, but unidentified, and it's not answering any attempts at communication. As this is going on, Amanda and Sarek are in their quarters, and Sarek's like, you embarrassed Spock with that teddy bear shit. You can't do that. He's a Starfleet officer. Amanda's like, I thought you didn't dig Starfleet, Big Daddy. Sarek's like, what I dig or don't dig ain't the point. Spock's a Starfleet officer. He needs to be respected. It is what it is. Amanda's like, I know you're proud of your son in your own remote, fucked up way, and I love you, even though it isn't logical. Sarek's like, you know what's logical? For you to suck my dick! Back on the bridge, the mysterious ship is toying with the Enterprise, zooming right by at high speed, then resuming a parallel course. Spock notes that the ship was traveling at warp 10. Kirk's like, great, it's those giant salamanders again. I'll sure be glad when we finally run them out of this part of the galaxy. Later, the delegates are hanging out in the reception area again. Sarek takes a sneaky pill, then Pig Boy steps to him again like, seriously, how are you going to vote at the meeting? Sarek says, all right, fine. You don't want to wait, so here it is. I'm going to vote in favor of admitting Corridon to the Federation, so we can administer its wealth to the benefit of its people and protect its valuable supply of dilithium crystals from illegal mining operations. That sets Pig Boy off. He's like, are you saying we're thieves? You'll pay for your slander, Sarek. And Sarek says, threats are illogical, and payment is often expensive, which is the cold-blooded Vulcan way of saying, you just stay out of my way, pig face, and you won't have to worry about nothing, man! Cut to Pig Boy dangling lifelessly out of a maintenance shaft. A security guy discovers him and calls it in to the captain. Kirk's like, I'll be right there. I'm just taking a minute to let the ladies see what a real man looks like. Remember when actors could be shirtless on camera and just look normal? Like, Shatner is in good shape there for a normal guy. He's a reasonable level of fit for a person with his job. He's not superhero jacked. Compare that to Chris Pine in the most recent Star Trek movies, with his bulging biceps and rock-hard titties out to here. When does Captain Kirk have time to do that many bench presses? Anyway, I'm just saying. Kirk puts a shirt on, and he, McCoy, and Spock arrive on the scene. McCoy examines Pig Boy and declares that the cause of death was a broken neck. Shit. Maybe he'd have seen it coming if he had eyes. Whoever did it was skilled. They knew exactly where to apply pressure to snap Pig Boy's neck and kill him instantly. Spock's like, it could have been a Vulcan. There's a Vulcan martial art that was used in the old days as a humane method of execution, and every Vulcan knows it, like how every Chinese person knows Kung Fu. I saw your father arguing with Pig Boy earlier. Do you think he's capable of killing? If he has a reason. He killed all my hopes and dreams when I was a child. They go to talk to Sarek, who doesn't have an alibi. He says he was meditating alone when Pig Boy was killed. A moment later, he collapses. They take him to sickbay, where McCoy diagnoses Sarek with a heart defect. It turns out Sarek's already known about this for some time, but he's kept it between himself and his doctor on Vulcan. He's had attacks like these before, including one a few hours ago around the time when Pig Boy was slaughtered. McCoy says that Sarek needs surgery, but there's a problem. His blood type is rare, and they don't have anything compatible in the blood bank. Spock says, my blood is the same type as Sarek's. I'm half human, but you can filter out the human bits and it should work. McCoy's like, no, you don't understand how bloody this operation is going to be. I need enough blood to fill up a movie studio water tower or it ain't going to work, man. I have to squirt blood all over the operating room with a hose just to get into the right headspace. There's a possible solution, an experimental drug that increases the body's production of blood. Sarek is too weak to handle it in his condition, but Spock might be strong enough for it. That way, he could produce enough blood for McCoy to splatter all over the place during the operation, but it's still extremely dangerous to Spock, and McCoy refuses to take the risk. Cut to Kirk having a Star Trek fight in the hallway with an Andorian guy. Not Shraz, the Andorian guy from before, a different Andorian guy. Kirk wins the fight, but not before he gets stabbed real good. They get Kirk to sickbay. McCoy says it's a punctured lung. Kirk is lucky. He should be fine, but he needs to stay off his feet for a while. Spock's like, well, I guess I'm in command now. If you need me, I'll be in the brig tuning up that Andorian who stabbed the captain. But Sarek suddenly takes a turn for the worse, and McCoy now sees no choice but to do the risky surgery. But now, Spock refuses to do it. McCoy reminds Spock that he can turn command over to Scotty during the operation, but Spock's like, we've got a ship full of important delegates, we're being chased by a mysterious vessel, and there has been a murder and an attempted murder on board. My first duty is to the Enterprise, and I can't just set it aside because my daddy needs some of my blood. Sorry, not sorry. Spock stops by the brig, but the Andorian, whose name is Thelev, ain't talking. Spock goes to his quarters, and while he's there, Amanda shows up to try and guilt-trip him into doing the surgery with Sarek. Spock's like, can't do it. I have a duty to the ship. These are dangerous times, and I can't dismiss my responsibilities to save the life of one person, even if it is my father. If he were here, Sarek would agree. It's the logical choice. Amanda's like, here's what I think of your logic, and she gives him a smack and walks out. In sickbay, Kirk wakes up and learns what's going on with Spock and Sarek. He says, okay, here's the plan. I'll get up and go to the bridge and tell Spock I'm okay and that he can come down here and do the surgery to save his father. Then I'll turn command over to Scotty and go lay down before my guts start falling out. Sound good? Good. So they do that. And Spock, gullible sap that he is, falls for it and reports to sickbay. Kirk is just about to turn command over to Scotty when that ship that's been following them around moves in for an attack run. Uhura detects the signal coming from the ship again and identifies that it's being received by someone on the Enterprise, specifically in the brig. The security guards try to search Thelev, but he resists and they stun him with a phaser blast. When he hits the floor, one of his antennae breaks off, revealing a receiver hidden inside it. The guards report all this to Kirk, who orders Thelev brought to the bridge immediately. In sickbay, McCoy's like, I'm just gonna fuck them both up on NyQuil before we get started. Spock tries to sit up and say something important he's just realized about the enemy ship chasing them, but McCoy tells Chapel to give him a dose of extra strength NyQuil to put him out so the cutting can start. While in sickbay the cutting starts, on the bridge the shooting has started. At first, the enemy ship is able to easily outmaneuver the Enterprise and avoid the phaser fire and photon torpedoes Kirk throws at it. But eventually, with fake Andorian Thelev watching, Kirk orders power shut down all over the ship and baits the enemy ship in close, making his adversary think the Enterprise is disabled. When the enemy ship approaches, Kirk orders phasers, and Chekhov nails a direct hit, disabling the enemy ship. Kirk tries to take the enemy ship in tow, but it explodes a moment later. Then, Thelev collapses as well, having taken poison, as he was ordered to do in case of capture. Well, that's that then. Kirk heads down to sickbay, where the operation has been a success and both Spock and Sarek are okay. Kirk tells McCoy to expect Thelev's body to be delivered for an autopsy, but Spock has thoughts on what the result will be. I expect you'll find that Thelev was an Orion, disguised as an Andorian, he says. Orion smugglers have been raiding the Corridan system for dilithium crystals. It's logical that they'd want to kill the delegates to disrupt the council vote, to keep Corridan from joining the Federation. Spock also explains the thing he tried to tell McCoy about the enemy ship before he got robo-tripped into a coma. The ship was on a one-way mission from the beginning. It was able to move so fast and put up such a good fight against the Enterprise despite being so small because it was never intended to come back from this fight. So it was able to use all of its power on everything it did. Kirk's like, good work, Spock. Thanks. Amanda turns to Sarek like, don't you want to say thank you to Spock as well for saving your life? Sarek's like, why? What he did was the logical thing to do. You don't thank logic, you daffy broad. Amanda's like, I've about had it with your logic. You know what you can do with your logic? Spock's like, emotional, isn't she? Sarek says, she's always been that way. Spock's like, indeed. Why did you marry her? And Sarek's like, are you shitting me? Look at her. Your mom is a babe. When she was younger, she looked just like Winona Ryder and Mia Kirshner. It was nuts. Kirk starts to collapse from his earlier wound, and McCoy helps him over to a bed. Spock tries to get up, but McCoy orders him to stay where he is. Both Kirk and Spock protest, but McCoy hushes him, then does a classic Mr. Roper take to the camera and says, "What do you know? I finally got the last word. The end." I'm not saying anything that hasn't been said countless times already over the last almost 60 years, but damn, this is a great episode. It's well plotted, it's exciting, it's fun, it has some outstanding character beats, and perhaps most impressively of all, given that this is an original series episode, it doesn't feel padded. I'm always complaining about how even some of the better TOS outings end up feeling like they're treading water to hit their mandated running time, but that is not the case here at all. There are a lot of characters, there's a lot going on, and all of it always seems like it matters. The most prominent element of the episode, and the one that it's most remembered for, is the introduction of Spock's parents, Sarek and Amanda. It's always interesting when we get to see a new side of Spock. In this episode, we get to see how he behaves opposite both his father and his mother, and the differences at play there are, if I can use the most obvious word possible in this context, fascinating. We see tension between Spock and both of his parents, but each tension is unique to that relationship. There's a mutual chill between Spock and Sarek. We're told they haven't spoken to each other in a long time, and that the source of their estrangement is that Spock chose to join Starfleet instead of taking the career path Sarek wanted for him. Their dynamic is that of two people who suddenly find themselves thrown together, who have previously decided that they have nothing more to say to each other. They aren't bitter or snarky, they're civil, professional, but it's obvious that they would each rather be anywhere else than in the presence of the other. Between Spock and Amanda, that reserve only goes one way. Spock maintains an emotional distance, but Amanda is constantly trying to close that distance. She's not too pushy, usually. She knows her son and respects him, but she's always looking for a glimmer of the humanity that she knows is in there. I think one of the best scenes in the episode is this one in Spock's quarters, when Amanda tries to convince him to do the surgery to save his father. There's a moment where Amanda pleads with him to let the human side of himself come through to save his father's life. And Spock rolls his eyes and says, "Mother, how can you have lived among Vulcans all this time, married a Vulcan, raised a son on Vulcan, and still not understand what it means to be a Vulcan?" Amanda succeeds in bringing the human side of Spock out there, not by eliciting his sympathy, but his exasperation. There's another thing I like about that scene. One of the clubs that haters like to use to beat up on the more recent Star Trek shows is this idea that the new stuff is all too emotional, too interested in relationships, too much like a soap opera. If any of you dipshits are watching, as a rebuttal, I offer you this. Because if this ain't how you shoot a scene from a soap opera, I guess I haven't seen one. While I'm still on the subject of Sarek and Amanda, I also really love this brief scene of the two of them in their quarters, where Sarek gently admonishes Amanda for embarrassing Spock by talking about his childhood pet Selot. Amanda tries to get Sarek to admit that he's proud of Spock, but he won't say it. What he does say is, Spock should be given the respect that he is due. Not because he's my son, but because he is Spock. Yes, it's a logical, dispassionate statement from an ambassador about a Starfleet officer, but also, what a beautiful thing for a parent to say about their child. It's the way we would hope all parents would feel about their children, respecting them and demanding that others respect them for who they are. It also confirms that, in his way, Sarek does care about Spock, and that somewhere underneath the logic and the discipline and the stubbornness, he is just as hurt by their estrangement as is Amanda. The friendship between Kirk and Spock isn't as front and center here as the Spock, Sarek, Amanda stuff, but it still gets showcased in a couple of the episode's other better moments. I like how, as soon as Kirk realizes there's a rift between Spock and Sarek, he tries to fix it. Maybe not the best move, maybe not any of his business, but it's the human thing and the Kirk thing to do. His attempt to bring father and son together by asking Spock to explain the computers in engineering doesn't work, but Kirk gets a second chance later on and he takes it, at great risk to himself, when he pretends to be feeling fine after his knife attack so that Spock will give up command and go participate in the surgery to save Sarek's life. Someone who will fake being okay after getting stabbed in the lung so that you don't let your father die from a heart defect. That's a friend right there. It's a good episode for McCoy, too. He gets some entertaining exchanges with Spock, especially the bit about the giant saber-toothed teddy bear. He gets to do some important doctor shit, and he gets that great twist on the standard everybody laughs ending, where he and he alone gets the last laugh, and even gets to almost spike the camera. It's not quite a fourth wall break. If you look closely, his eye line is just slightly to the side of the lens. Plot-wise, this one is very well put together. The script for this episode is a model of how to craft a story in such a way that the plot serves the characters rather than the other way around. Notice how we jump in right away with McCoy and Kirk preparing to welcome Sarek, and then get Sarek and Amanda's introduction and the revelation that they're Spock's parents before it's ever explained to us exactly what's going on or why all these delegates are here. That explanation comes soon enough, but we get the most important stuff established first. Once we do learn what the situation is and meet a few of the other delegates, we're told just enough to give the actions of the characters context and meaning. The finer points of the Coridan petition to join the Federation are not included because they're not important. That's not what the episode is about. That's just background. We meet Gav, the Tellarite delegate, Pig Boy, and he's strongly established right away, as is his antagonistic dynamic with Sarek. It's not a terrible shock when he turns up dead, since the pressure cooker aspect of having all these delegates aboard the Enterprise has been played up since the beginning, but the immediate cut from Gav and Sarek threatening each other to Gav's soon-to-be butchered and spit-roasted carcass hanging out of a maintenance shaft is a bold choice that gives the proceedings a shot of momentum. The episode never really becomes a full-on murder mystery. The possibility of Sarek being the murderer is raised because that's a reasonable suspicion for the other characters to have, but we're not led very strongly to suspect that ourselves. And again, the solution is given away not long after by the attack on Kirk, and the question of the true identity and motivation of Thelev is dispensed with through some expository dialogue at the very end. All of which is fine because, again, that's not really what's important here. What's important here are the characters, and most importantly of all, Spock, Sarek, and Amanda. That focus on character is why the last act works so well. Several plot threads that have been building for the entire episode all start to pay off at once. The mysterious ship attacks. Thelev is revealed to be a fake Andorian and in secret contact with the ship. Sarek and Spock go into surgery, and Kirk is trying to hang on despite being seriously injured. And it's all compelling, not because of the plots, but because of what the plots mean for the characters. Does Coridan get admitted to the Federation? Do the Orions pay a price for their violent attempts to sabotage the conference? When Gav is ready to eat, who brings the potato salad? I don't know. Who gives a shit? Not important. I do hope it's not Chapel that brings the potato salad, though. If she makes it, you just know it'll be under-seasoned and have way too much celery. Journey to Babel is written by D.C. Fontana and directed by Joseph Pevney, and you could not ask for a better classic Trek creative team than that. Fontana is arguably the most important writer who ever worked on Star Trek the original series, her only competition for the title being the great Gene Kuhn, and Pevney is one of the most prolific directors on the series who helmed some of its best episodes, only a handful of which are better than this one. I've already sung the praises of Fontana's script, and rightfully so, as it's some of the best work she ever did on the show, which is saying something. Her dialogue is sharp. Her grasp of character is spot on. She conjures a complex relationship between Spock and his parents that feels true right away. And in Sarek, she creates someone who will eventually become a very important recurring character in the franchise. We don't see any more of him in TOS, but he pops up several times in the TOS film series and on TNG, and even in the first Kelvin Timeline movie and on Star Trek Discovery, though no longer played by the great Mark Lenard for those last two, as Leonard died in 1996. Even with Sarek remaining mostly off-screen, the relationship with Sarek becomes a defining one for Spock going forward. The character leaves an impression. Obviously, much of that is to the credit of Mark Lenard, who, like Leonard Nimoy, understands how to play a Vulcan so that he comes across as composed and unemotional, but never flat. But before anything else, it's on the page, and that's to Dorothy Fontana's credit. Regarding Pevney's direction, it's his usual confident job. This one is a bottle episode, at least in terms of location. All of the action takes place aboard the Enterprise, and Pevney masterfully shoots the episode so that it never feels like they're cutting corners to save on expenses, even though that's kind of what they were doing, since all those new costumes and makeup appliances for the alien delegates took a big bite out of the budget. As is usually the case with Pevney, my favorite shots of his are the simple, elegant ones that establish something small but important or solve a problem in an efficient but artful way. In this episode, I notice this shot near the beginning when Kirk, Spock, and McCoy are greeting Sarek and Amanda upon their arrival. We're positioned outside the shuttle hangar, looking in through two doorways. There's just this little camera move, a slight push-in through the outer doorway as Kirk walks through into the hangar. We can't push all the way into the hangar because there's not actually a set through there, just the facade of the shuttle standing in an empty soundstage. But that short push-in through the first doorway is enough to create a sense of three-dimensional space and size and suggest the existence of a shuttle bay beyond that inner door, even though we never see it. Journey to Babel is one of those milestone episodes of Star Trek, just a notch or two below the true universal classics of the series, like City on the Edge of Forever or The Trouble with Tribbles, both of which Joseph Pevney also directed. It introduces us to the Tellarites and the Andorians, which is important to the nerds, and it introduces us to Sarek and Amanda, which is important to the nerds, but also important to me. A nerd, but the good and acceptable kind. Perhaps most importantly of all, it solidifies one of the key elements of what makes Spock such a compelling character. As Amanda says at one point, because Spock is half human and half Vulcan, he's never been fully accepted by other humans or other Vulcans. In this episode, we see that he's neither accepted nor understood by his father, and that he's accepted but not quite understood by his mother. The only place Spock feels truly at home is on the Enterprise, with Kirk and McCoy and his other shipmates, and with us. Those are my thoughts on Journey to Babel. What do you think of this episode? Please share your thoughts with me in the comments. If you'd like to support this channel, and I sure wish you would, if you can afford it, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, becoming a channel member by clicking the join button, or by making a one-time gift by clicking the thanks button, or via PayPal or Venmo. Links are in the description. Please join me next time for a review of another family drama-centered episode. We move on to Star Trek The Next Generation to meet another first officer's estranged father in the second season episode, The Icarus Factor. See you next time for that one. Thanks for watching, and take care, everybody.